Chapter 398. What's wrong with me today? I feel like I'm bewitched. Not long after, when Rue Hui got up from her bed, she looked at Ayam lying beside her and Ryuto, who ran over without her noticing. She had a helpless expression. Not long ago, Rue Hui was bewitched by Ayam's heavenly demon charm and let her in. Then she was played. It was not news that Ayam liked both men and women. Since Rue Hui fell for her trick, she could only accept her fate and play with her. But as they played, Ryuto quickly ran over. What was supposed to be a tea party between two ladies suddenly turned into a game of two ladies and one man. Rue Hui did not expect this at all. Something's not right with her today. Her charm is several times stronger than usual. Something must have happened. Instantly, Ryuto frowned slightly and then looked at Ayam. Although he knew that Ayam's charm was at the level of Level 5 Extreme Superman, her magic power today was too terrifying. It was several times stronger than before. Hee, just think of it as me being bewitched. Ayam lay on the bed with a strange smile. Bewitched. Even bewitched would run away when they see you. After letting out a sigh, Rue Hui tidied her hair and said seriously, "Let's talk about something serious. America can't hold on any longer. Dozens of garrison bases have entered a state of battle readiness. They might attack at any moment." Ever since the royal family had been executed, Japan had been thrown into chaos. As an old father, American naturally couldn't sit still. Within a day, there was a stern protest from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. If it weren't for the brainwashed envoys stalling for time, the garrison base would have sent soldiers over by now. Up until now, America's military had 88 military bases and facilities in Nippon, with more than 30,000 soldiers stationed there. The headquarters of the military bases was in Yokota Base in Tokyo. It was not far from Ryuto and the others. 30,000 troops? That's no small matter. We have to think of a way to deal with it. Suddenly, Ryuto thought for a moment, and then his face showed some difficulty. As the boss of the weapon department, Ryuto naturally knew how many soldiers there were in his organization. Now, even if they worked together with the Heavenly Eye Group, the Kamiyoshi clan, and other surrounding forces, it would be difficult for them to gather a force that could block 30,000 modern soldiers. Moreover, if a fight really broke out, the American side had more than 30,000 people. When the time came, the Navy, Army, and Air Force would send out hundreds of thousands of soldiers. That would be a big problem. Rue Hui said solemnly, "Why don't we follow the original plan and assassinate their important figures? This should be the simplest and most effective method." In the beginning, Rue Hui had discussed with Ryuto and Ayam how to deal with America. The first method they thought of was assassination. Top fighters like Ryuto and Rabbit Ball could easily assassinate a group of America's upper echelons. Even if they could not directly kill President Tiden, killing a large group of administrative personnel could greatly slow down their progress. However, Ayam shook her head and smiled. "No need to go through so much trouble. Come with me to Yokota Base in a bit. I have a way to deal with them all at once." Yokota Base? Wasn't that the largest American military base near Tokyo? And Ayam said to deal with them all at once? How should they? Hiss. No way. Thinking of this, Rue Hui and Ryuto's eyes widened as they thought of the possibility. How could they deal with the 30,000 American soldiers in their territory? At first glance, it seemed like a difficult mission, but for the current Ayam, it was not the case. Not long after, the scene cut to the Yokota Base commander's office. It was a busy scene inside. Yokota Base was located 45 kilometers west of Tokyo in Fusenko, Tama Prefecture. It covered an area of 7.3 square kilometers and was the command center of the American Air Force in Northeast Asia. It was the main combat base and air transport base. Due to the strategic importance of this base, the American Air Force headquarters in Japan was built here. The person in charge was Lieutenant General Doran John. He reported directly to the American President and the Hexagon. Lieutenant General Doran was an American with thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a stubble. He was about 60 years old, but he was full of energy as if he always had endless energy. However, this lieutenant general was not very happy. His hat was to the side, and he had a cigar in his mouth. He did not have time to light it, and he was just pretending to be angry. However, this was to be expected. After all, Doran had been so busy these few days that he did not know if he was dreaming. Hello? Is the aircraft carrier in Yokosuka ready? Can it move out at any time? Very good. Okinawa's defense must be done as best as possible. There are already a lot of things to do there. We must not let anything go wrong. General, the Hexagon sent a secret letter. I've contacted the Japanese interim government. They said they have no comment. Move all the soldiers and their families out of the base as soon as possible. Don't count the Japanese. Just take the American people away. At this time, Doran was holding a phone and looking at the computer in his office. There were all kinds of messy documents on the desk, as if he was working crazily with 3 heads and 6 arms. Due to the destruction of the royal family and the series of riots, the American Air Force's control over the country had reached an all-time low. The new Prime Minister refused to communicate with Doran. They seemed to be determined to clear out the American troops and were even willing to go to war. This made Doran feel that there was something wrong with their heads. Crazy, this was crazy. From Doran's point of view, the Japanese were their domesticated dogs, who knew that when the kennel was in chaos, they would turn around and bite their masters. This was incomprehensible. The worst part was that there seemed to be 2 powerful forces behind this chaos: Komiyoshi clan and Tenmu group. Doran had heard of these 2 forces before, but he did not expect them to go to this extent. They wanted to destroy the country and fight to the death with the American Air Force. Of course, Doran was not afraid of war. As a soldier, this was his duty. Due to the recent busy work, this Lieutenant General of the American Air Force was already thinking about how to deal with the Japanese after the war. Should he try the Lee May barbecue? Or should he just ask for a few more fatties and boys? For Doran, he would never go easy on his enemies. If he really fought, it would be a bloody scene. However, from a certain perspective, this war might not even start. Knock knock. Just as Doran was looking at the documents on the table and was about to reply to the Hexagon building message, there was a knock on the door. Come in, Doran said without looking up. After all, there were only his subordinates in this base. There was no possibility of outsiders coming in. However, the next second, this Lieutenant General of the American Air Force heard a cute voice that he had never heard before. Yo, this is the office of the American Air Force's commander? It's not grand enough. It's not even as grand as my office. Huh? Who? This voice is? Instantly, Doran hurriedly raised his head to look at the door. Only then did he notice that a woman with a devastatingly beautiful appearance was sauntering in leisurely. Furthermore, there was another young man following behind the woman. Both of them didn't look like they were from the military base. How is this possible? How did they get in? The moment he saw the 2 uninvited guests, Doran immediately reached for his gun. But the woman smiled and said, sit quietly. Stop and sit there quietly. To Lieutenant General Doran, who only took orders from President American and was second only to him, it was impossible for an unknown outsider to make him obey with just a few words. However, such an impossible thing had really happened. The moment the woman spoke, Doran felt his hand freeze in the air. Even if the gun was right in front of him, he could not touch it at all. This is like hypnosis on the spot. Too strong. Seeing Lieutenant General American frozen in place, the young man behind him could not help but sigh. The 2 people who suddenly came to the commander's office were Ryuto and Ayam. How did the 2 of them sneak into this place without a sound? Of course, it was because of the Black Wing Ninja and the Guardian Ninja. Ninjas were experts in infiltration. The 2 groups of ninjas under Kanzaki and Amame were experts among experts. They could even sneak into a professional military base. Moreover, in order to prepare to assassinate the commander here, they already knew the situation inside the base. It would not take them much effort to escort their master in. Of course, there were limitations to assassinating. After all, it was not difficult to assassinate a few commanders, but it was impossible to assassinate an entire army of 30,000. That was why Yongji had appeared here. What she wanted was not an assassination, but a total annihilation. In front of Lieutenant General Doran, Ayam walked over, waved her hand in front of his eyes, and said in a charlatan-like tone, "Next, you will do whatever I say, understand?" Ayam's voice was very hoarse. It sounded like a whisper from the abyss in the dark night. In this state, Ayam combined with her LV6 charm, Heavenly Devil's Arrival, God-level charm, naturally destroyed Doran's consciousness, causing him to fall into a dazed and delirious state. He also replied in a muffled tone, "Yes, whatever you say, I will do." Wah, it's even this kind of hypnotic charm. That's ridiculous. Seeing the Lieutenant General fall into her trap, Ryuto could not help but tremble slightly. Previously, Yongji was also in a state of natural charm, but now, she had reached a higher level. She had reached the point where a simple sentence could be used as a hypnosis technique. She was simply invincible. Very good. Ayam nodded and smiled. Immediately gather all the American soldiers stationed in Japan and start a live broadcast of the pre-war mobilization. Make sure that all the soldiers can sit in front of the screen and watch the live broadcast. Yes. I will arrange it right away. After being ordered by Madame Yongji, Lieutenant General Dolan immediately picked up the phone and ordered his deputy on the other side of the phone to immediately carry out this unprecedented pre-war mobilization. Summoning all the American soldiers stationed in Japan to sit in front of the screen and having Lieutenant General Dolan conduct a pre-war mobilization was a little troublesome, but it was not something unacceptable. After all, the soldiers in the 80 or so bases were already prepared for war. As long as the commander gave the order, they would be able to throw themselves into the righteous war. We, the glorious American soldiers, are the messengers of justice that protect this world. When the 30,000 soldiers sat in front of the screen and waited for Lieutenant General Doran to conduct the pre-war mobilization, that was what most of them were thinking. However, strangely, after the screen flashed for a while, it was not the familiar Lieutenant General Doran that everyone was familiar with. Instead, it was an unfamiliar figure. The figure on the screen was a woman, but not a woman. This was because using a person to describe her was a bit disrespectful. She was indeed very beautiful, but it was not a matter of beauty. Instead, it was the divinity that this woman exuded that made everyone who saw her want to kneel before her. When the 30,000 soldiers were entranced by the figure on the screen, the woman on the screen showed a strange smile. Then she opened her mouth and said to everyone, "My name is Tenmu Ayam. I am also your master. Please do as I say." "Yes, master." Unknowingly, the tens of thousands of soldiers sitting in front of the screen said in unison, "Now, take out your pistols or any other weapons of mass destruction from your bodies." As soon as the woman on the screen finished speaking, the soldiers scrambled to hold their guns in their hands. Some who didn't have guns raised their grenades directly, and some even hugged the mortars at once. "Next, aim the weapon at your head and prepare to fire." Whoosh! Accompanied by a series of mechanical noises, tens of thousands of soldiers aimed their pistols, submachine guns, grenades, mortars, and other weapons at their heads. They also put their hands on the triggers, bolts, and launchers. Finally, in the name of Tenmu Ayam, I order you to quickly head to paradise. Amen. Bang! The moment Yongji gave the final order, a series of explosions rang out from the 88 American bases in Japan. Today, heaven must be exceptionally busy. Chapter 399. 88 American bases, more than 30,000 soldiers, were all wiped out in an instant. The scene at that time could be said to be quite shocking. It was so shocking that others didn't know how to describe it. According to the staff of the American base in Nippon, the incident began with a video conference. I don't know what happened, but Lieutenant General Doran asked for a pre-war mobilization. All soldiers had to participate, even if they had to break their legs. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just an auntie sweeping the floor. I was sweeping the floor outside the conference hall. As I was sweeping, I heard a woman's voice. How do I describe her voice? It was beautiful, but it was also terrifying. Not long after, there was a series of gunshots and explosions from inside. I ran away at that time. Only later did I find out that everyone inside was dead. It was really terrifying. The above report came from an auntie who used to do odd jobs in a base in Japan. In addition to this auntie, many of the base's internal staff members also gave their testimonies. Terrifying, it was terrifying. Everyone seemed to have gone crazy. They suddenly pointed their guns at their own heads and killed themselves. If you ask me, they must have been possessed. Otherwise, why would so many people point their guns at their own faces? Oh, and that woman, although I didn't see her, I knew she was a beauty from her voice. Maybe a witch from hell. According to the later investigation, there were too many suspicious points in this American base madness incident. When the report was delivered to the Hexagon, everyone was stunned. Mr. President, this is an emergency report from Japan. When the female secretary gave the report to the president, she was completely shocked. The current president of American, Turden, was an old man with blonde hair. He liked to play the accordion, but he had a bit of Alzheimer's. He would fall down when he walked and even lose control of his bowels. When he saw the secretary's shocked expression, he calmly smiled and said, "Oh, my dear Monica, why do you have such an expression? Is it because I didn't zip it properly? Ha ha ha, this is a standard American joke." Really? But Mr. President, take a look at this first. I'm a little presbyopic recently. Just read it to me with your sweet voice. President Turden said pretentiously as he reached his hand under the secretary's skirt. The secretary seemed to be used to this way of reporting, but she still whispered, "Well, don't be afraid of what I'm going to say next." "Oh, how can there be anything I'm afraid of? I am the president of American, the most powerful person in the world." "All right. Not long ago, all 30,000 of our soldiers stationed in Japan died in the line of duty." Before he could finish his sentence, Tae Deng was petrified. The arrogant expression on his face froze on the spot. His hands that were frantically playing the accordion also stopped. He looked like an old cat that had been kicked in the butt by Uncle Tom's boots. "Mr. President, are you all right? There must be something wrong with my hearing. You just said that our 30,000 soldiers in Japan were all smoked eaglebows? Were they smoking something strange? They died in the line of duty, dear Mr. President. They all went to heaven and won't come back." After confirming that the secretary was not joking with him, Tae Deng's face suddenly became very ugly. The few muscles on his face suddenly twisted. He looked like he was crying and laughing, angry and angry. In short, he looked as awkward as he could. After holding it in for a full 5 minutes, he slowly said, "Dear Lewinsky, well, my name is Monica. Lewinsky was your secretary before the previous secretary. She is also your ex-wife. Oh, I remembered wrong. You are all so charming, and your voices are so beautiful. Do you want to come to my room tonight to report on your work? So what are you going to do about this matter now?" "What matter?" "All of our U.S. troops stationed in Japan were suddenly smoked." "Bah! It's about dying in the line of duty." "Well, this is indeed a big problem." When it came to serious matters, Tae Deng frowned and said helplessly, "So many soldiers died in the line of duty, the compensation must be very expensive. Do we have any left in the treasury? First of all, we have to speed up the printing of money. I don't think now is the time to talk about compensation. Is it the time to talk about coming to my room tonight to report on your work?" "Neither. Now the Hexagon wants you to go and preside over the war conference immediately. This is a war." "I see. I'll go now." Suddenly, Tae Deng stood up from the chair, put on his pants, and strode out of the door. He said, "This is a war, I should preside over the war conference. This is a war, I should preside over the war conference. Mr. President, you're going the wrong way, the elevator is over there." "Oh, okay, no problem." After turning his head and nodding to the secretary, Tae Deng continued to mutter, "This is a war. The elevator is over there. This is a war. The elevator is over there. Is this guy okay? How can he hold a war conference like this?" The female secretary shook her head slightly as she watched the president walk unsteadily, as if he could fall at any time. Speaking of the hexagon, it was the place where the presidents of the United States used for wartime command. In fact, not long ago, the hexagon had entered a state of full readiness for war. Even if one looked inside from the outside, they could see countless figures flashing inside. Is there still no news from Nippon? The missile launch force is ready at any time. Be ready to contact the leaders of other allies at any time and ask them to provide support. Is there really going to be a war? We don't even know what's going on. It's because we don't know what's going on that it's scary. 30,000 people are gone. Yeah, I don't know how Nippon did it. It's ridiculous. At this moment, the staff in the hexagon complained as they worked. Because what happened today was too strange, and because it happened in 88 bases at once, the news was immediately reported to the top through various channels. It didn't take long for almost everyone in the hexagon to know that 30,000 soldiers had disappeared from the Nippon base. It was like watching a disaster movie. Therefore, the three commanders of the United States Navy, Army, and Air Force, as well as the staff officers and generals, were discussing wildly in the war hall. Although it was called the war hall, it was filled with all kinds of computers, televisions, and some unknown machines. While staying in this place, the president could command the U.S. Navy, Army, and Air Force. If necessary, he could even launch nuclear weapons at any time. Just then, Tae Deng walked in slowly. He looked at the busy people inside and raised his hand with a smile. "Good afternoon, everyone. Do you want some dessert? I know a hotel that has delicious donuts. Mr. President, stop joking, come sit down." Before he could finish his sentence, a staff member pulled him to the seat of honor and quickly placed a diaper under his butt. If the president sat down for too long, he would need a diaper to prevent embarrassing accidents. Therefore, the diaper in the hexagon was the guardian of America, guarding the last dignity of America. Seeing that the president had already taken his seat, the generals next to him also sat around the table, wanting to see what instructions Tae Deng had for him. After a few seconds, Tae Deng said in a deep voice, "Everyone, this is a war." Hearing this, the surrounding generals nodded one after another. After all, they thought so too. The death of 30,000 American soldiers was no small matter. After all, with so many soldiers dead, how much compensation would they have to pay? Wasn't this killing them? However, Turden's next sentence changed the topic and said seriously, "This is a war. The elevator is over there." "What? Mr. President? What did you say?" The elevator is over there." Once the words came out, everyone was shocked. The generals all looked at the president as if they saw a ghost. They couldn't understand what he was talking about. But among them, there were some who were smarter and seemed to understand the meaning behind the president's words. Elevator? Was the president referring to the Elevator Research Institute? In the entire American country, there were all kinds of secret research institutes. One of the most special institutes was called the Elevator Research Institute. Of course, despite the name, they didn't research elevators, but aliens. This was not a joke. They really did research on aliens, and there was a living alien creature in the institute. The alien creature looked like a giant gorilla, but it was not a gorilla in nature. It was an alien monster that was much more violent and powerful. It was said that the alien creature fell into America with a meteor shower a few decades ago. Scientists had been secretly studying it in the Elevator Research Institute. Because they were afraid that the gorilla would attack people, the scientists had been using high-concentration liquid nitrogen to freeze it, keeping it in a half-dead state. But if one day America was seriously threatened, then they would unfreeze the alien gorilla and send it to fight the monster that was about to destroy the world. Don't ask why they thought the alien gorilla would fight for America. The answer was that it was always like this in the movies. After thinking about this, the army commander couldn't help but frown. "Mr. President, do we really need to use the elevator? That thing is not a small risk, and it could lead to even greater damage. Suddenly, the Navy commander next to him sighed. But this time the enemy killed 30,000 people in an instant. This is definitely not human power. Our soldiers shouldn't be able to do anything about it. Why are you so sure that the soldiers can't do anything about it? Because that's how it is in the movies, right? Whenever we encounter a powerful enemy that can destroy the world, our American soldiers are always just background characters. Because the Navy commander's words were so reasonable, the people around him were speechless. So the Air Force commander once again looked at the great president and asked again, "Mr. President, do we really need to use the elevator? I think we can still use conventional forces to fight." Hearing this, Turden waved his hand and said firmly, "Elevator, we have to use the elevator." What he meant by this sentence was, if we don't use the elevator and take the stairs, how tiring would it be? What if I fall down again? From beginning to end, the president's brain seemed to be in a different dimension from the other generals, and it felt like a chicken talking to a duck. However, before they could finish their discussion, another urgent report was sent to them. "Mr. President, not good. Some videos have begun to spread crazily in our local military camps. People who have seen the videos have all pulled out their guns and committed suicide. It's exactly the same as the situation at the base in Nippon." What? When they heard the sudden emergency report, everyone, except for Turden, was shocked. Then, they contacted the military headquarters they belonged to. What? More than 1,000 people committed suicide in 10 minutes. How did those videos come about? What? It was hacked into the TV system. It was played on the TV in the military camp? Order all TVs to be turned off immediately. Cut off the network and confiscate the soldiers' mobile phones. What? If everything is banned, there will be no way to fight? Is this the time to say this? So many people died. You pay for the compensation. For a time, the entire hexagon was in chaos. The strange phenomenon of American suicides had spread to the American mainland. If this continued, in a few days, the country's defense forces would be completely destroyed. This was not a war, but it was more like a war. The generals present had never experienced such a terrible war. They didn't even know what the enemy looked like, and they were already defeated. Only then did they look at the old man sitting high in the president's seat. So that's why the president said he wanted to use the alien gorilla in the elevator as soon as he came up? As expected of the great Mr. President of the American Empire, he is so far-sighted, and we are the short-sighted ones. In such a muddled situation, President Biden signed the order to release the alien gorilla in the Elevator Research Institute. Chapter 400. From a certain perspective, releasing the alien gorilla could be said to be a smart and stupid decision. Smart was smart, but American didn't seem to have any way to fight against the mysterious video suicide attack. If they released the alien gorilla to fight with the enemy, they didn't need to pay compensation. It was the perfect warrior for American. But stupidity lies in the fact that the released alien gorilla might not necessarily do things according to their ideas. That afternoon, in American's Elevator Research Institute, a few scientists in white coats walked toward a small room in the innermost part of the institute with a large pile of materials and equipment. All of them looked serious, as if they were preparing for a very complicated research. Indeed, the research was very complicated because they were trying to figure out how to release the alien gorilla and control it. As they walked, a young researcher couldn't help but ask, "Director, do you think we can successfully control that guy?" "It's not a matter of whether we can or not, but we must succeed. Otherwise, the higher-ups won't let us go." The director walked forward with firm steps while shaking his head slightly. Ever since the establishment of this Elevator Research Institute, all the researchers inside had no way out. In the past few decades, American had allocated at least $10 billion to this research institute in order to create an alien warrior that could serve the country at the last moment. Now that President Turden had ordered the director to release the alien warrior to fight for the country, the director couldn't say no. If the director said no, then there was a high probability that his life would end at that moment. After all, the tens of billions of dollars of funding were not taken for free. Moreover, more than half of it had been pocketed by the previous directors and researchers. Therefore, the director of this generation was very unlucky. He had to bear the burden of $10 billion for all his predecessors. But it didn't matter. There would always be a way when the car reached the mountain. With the providence of America, aliens and whatnot will naturally become a powerful helper for us. Where did the director's confidence come from? Because it was always like this in movies. Therefore, the director of the Elevator Research Institute led a group of researchers to the research institute where the alien gorilla was frozen. They were ready to unfreeze it. It's really a monster. It won't eat us when it comes out, right? Looking at the black figure frozen in the huge ice block, one of the researchers couldn't help but complain. It shouldn't. Maybe this alien creature is very friendly? What's more, it's been living here for decades, so it should at least pay some rent. He didn't know if he was joking or just trying to numb himself, but the director sighed and pressed the unfreeze button. In everyone's opinion, the unfreezing plan of the Elevator Research Institute couldn't fail this time. The alien gorilla should have calmed down after a period of chaos. It would accept the command of the American government and fight the evil enemy outside. However, when the gorilla opened its blood-red eyes, everyone in the research institute finally reacted. This guy didn't seem to be as easy to talk to as in the movies. Instead, he was a real monster. In this way, a week later, the American was destroyed. It was not a joke or any exaggeration to describe this sentence. It was the truth. The violent alien warrior that rushed out of the Elevator Research Institute killed all the researchers in the institute. It then rushed out of the suburbs and killed everyone in sight. When Ryuto, Ruehue, and Iam saw the video sent by American, the three of them had a strange expression. At this time, on the big screen, a strange-looking big red guy was rushing toward the hexagon with great speed. As the red figure rushed in, the supposedly indestructible building instantly collapsed. A large number of staff became non-recyclable garbage along with the scattered debris of the building. A week, only a short 7 days. The monster slaughtered its way from the south to the north, then from the north to the west, then from the west to the east, slaughtering the entire country. From the video, it could be seen that the so-called modern weapons were useless against the monster. Bullets were like tickles to it and had no effect at all. Bombs, cannonballs, missiles, and other things could be fired and hit it head-on. Not even a strand of hair would be lost. What about the alien warrior? Its jumping ability was enough to jump from the ground and grab the wings of fighter jets and tear them apart. It could also clash with hundreds of tanks on the ground and knock them all to the ground. Even the aircraft carrier of the American Navy, which weighed more than 100,000 tons, was completely destroyed by its own flesh and blood. This level of combat power scared a lot of American generals and soldiers away. After all, no one wanted to die in front of this alien creature. Thus, in just a few days, the American army was completely routed. A large number of soldiers fled in all kinds of vehicles, and the civilians followed them to the neighboring countries in the south. President Turden was scared to death because of a heart attack. The entire country was finished. Just like that, Iam and the other's strongest enemies self-destructed in just a week. The culprit was an alien creature. For a moment, I don't know what to say. What's going on with this world? After watching the video from the other side, Ruehue couldn't help but rub her head and complain in a helpless tone. In Ruehue's eyes, the world she lived in was quite normal. But ever since Ryuto appeared, the world seemed to have become more and more abnormal. Now, it was abnormal to the extreme. Even aliens came out. It was like the content of a third-rate novel. Iam smiled. The world is abnormal to begin with. It's just that all the abnormalities before were hidden under the surface, and no one noticed. Okay, I know you've seen through it. What should we do now? That alien creature isn't something that can be easily dealt with. From the previous video, the alien gorilla's combat power was basically equivalent to Superman in comics. Its body was invulnerable. Any modern weapon was like scratching an itch. It was almost useless. For example, American's army was already considered the strongest in the world, but it was still terrifyingly weak in front of power far beyond human imagination. After all, the army was used to deal with humans, not an alien. The result of doing so was usually suicide. And Rue Hui knew that the armed forces on her side were not even as strong as American's army. It was basically impossible to deal with the monkey. Of course, this was just a fantasy from a normal point of view. For the other two, Ryuto and Ayam, it was not impossible to deal with that guy. Alien. Alien. If that guy was an alien, would that special skill have any effect on it? Since the moment Ryuto saw the video, he kept thinking in his mind. Logically speaking, aliens were invincible in this world, but in Ryuto's Krypton shopping mall, there was a skill that specifically targeted aliens. And the name of the skill was One-Hit Kill Technique specifically targeted aliens. In fact, when Ryuto saw this strange skill, he wanted to complain. What the hell is this? A skill specifically targeted at aliens? This skill is too creative. How did it come up with this? Was there really any use for it? However, reality told him that it really could be used. You can't say that aliens don't exist just because you haven't seen them with your own eyes. Look, aren't the aliens here? This is not a movie or a game, this is a real alien landing. And the description of the one-hit kill technique specifically targeted aliens was, after learning it, you can kill any alien that comes to Earth in one hit. In other words, as long as Ryuto bought this skill, he could kill the alien gorilla on the spot. However, there was obviously a small problem in this, that was, the price of this one-hit kill technique specifically targeted aliens was 1 trillion. It wasn't $1 trillion or $100 million. It was $1 trillion. 1 trillion equals 1 trillion, 1 trillion equals 1 trillion, 1 trillion equals 1 trillion, 1 trillion. God knows how many zeros there were. It was truly an astronomical number. But if he had this money, Ryuto was confident that he could kill the alien gorilla. How were they going to ask for $1 trillion? No, even if he asked, where would Rue Hui and Ayam find this trillion? Such a large amount of money, even if it was the Kamiyoshi and the Tenmu group that had occupied all of Nippon, it was difficult to come up with it at once. Just as Ryuto was worrying about this large amount of money, Ayam on the side looked at him. What? Are you worried about how to get the trillion? Yeah, such a large amount of money, how do I? The moment he heard Ayam's words, Ryuto was taken aback at first, then his eyes widened suddenly. What's going on? Why would Ayam? Hiss. No way. After Ayam pointed out this number, Ryuto suddenly had a flash of inspiration in his mind, and many things that could not be explained before also made sense. In fact, when Ryuto transmigrated to this world, he felt that this world was very strange. Or, mainly, Ayam was very strange. Her behavior and words were very different from the Tenmu Ayam that Ryuto knew. The most important thing was that this Ayam was too strong. How strong was she? So strong that she seemed to be able to see the future, so strong that she seemed to be able to see through everyone's inner world, so strong that she could easily kill the most powerful enemy. This Ayam was very different from the original her in the game. In addition, she actually knew the number trillion that normal people could not imagine, which could only mean one thing, and that was Ayam also had the same system as him. Only this answer could explain where all these changes came from, and only this answer could explain all the drastic changes in this world. Suddenly, Ryuto could not help but ask, Ayam, you also? Sure, some things are better known, maintaining a little mystery is the secret to a woman's beauty. Without waiting for Ryuto to finish, Ayam put her finger on her red lips and smiled at him. Indeed, Ayam had always been mysterious, but she especially wanted to see Ryuto's surprised expression now, so she casually said the number. Because she also had the system, Ayam naturally knew the one-hit kill technique for aliens, and she immediately realized that the skill could solve the current problem. It was just that now Ayam was facing the same problem as Mr. Long, that was, how to raise the trillion as soon as possible. With such a large amount of money, it is not enough to gather all the cash on hand. Even if the entire national treasury is emptied. Huh? Wait. National treasury? No, bank. Right. There is still this way. It had to be said that Yongji's resourcefulness was relatively high. When faced with this kind of money problem, she immediately thought of a solution. Ruehui, now the Bank of Japan is under your jurisdiction, right? Yes, what's wrong? Now we have a way to deal with the alien, but it requires a lot of money. A lot of money? Is it a lot of money that we can't take out? It is indeed difficult to take out. The total amount is 1 trillion. Hiss. 1 trillion. The moment she heard this unit, Ruehui couldn't help but frown. After all, she had never mobilized such a large amount of money in her life. The entire annual government budget of Japan was only 10 trillion, which was only 1% of 1 trillion. So Ruehui covered her forehead and said, such a large amount of money, even if the bank prints the money on the spot, it will take a long time. The monster is coming soon. Can we really make it? Based on the current observation of the alien gorilla, it seemed to be crossing the Pacific Ocean and would soon come to Asia. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Iam smiled and said, it doesn't take long. In fact, just 1 bill will do. 1 bill? 1 what? A bill with 1 trillion written on it, then deposit it into the bank account, and the problem is solved. Having said that, Iam turned her head and smiled at the dumbfounded Ryuto, and a hint of mockery flashed in her eyes. Chapter 401. Although Ryuto had been using the system to shop, there was one thing he didn't understand, and that was the nature of money. However, this problem was a bit complicated, and it involved a lot of messy content. In essence, money was a special commodity that served as a general equivalent. It was used as a medium of exchange, a tool to store value, and a unit of account. It was a material and symbolic appendage of people's commodity values. Therefore, from this point of view, the currency issued by the country itself had no value. That was to say, whether it was 1 yuan, 100 yuan, 10,000 yuan, 100 million yuan, or 1 trillion yuan, the country could issue as much money as it wanted. The number itself was just a number, and it didn't represent any actual value. What really made money valuable was the gross domestic product of the country that issued the currency, as well as national power endorsement, national credit, and other extremely complicated factors. It would be boring to explain them one by one. Iam herself was not an expert in economics, but she knew one thing very well, that was, her so-called pay-to-win system actually had serious loopholes. First of all, in the black technology system owned by Ryuto and Iam, all transactions were completed in the currency of their current country. And the price of the goods used for transactions was set from the beginning, and there would be no fluctuations in the later stages. For example, a skill book was sold for 1 million yuan, a black technology gun was sold for 10 million yuan, a super bulletproof vest was sold for 100 million yuan, or a monster-level skill like Alien One-Hit Kill was sold for 1 trillion yuan, and so on. These things were sold for as much money as they were sold. It was that honest. But the problem was that the system only determined how much money the buyer spent, but it didn't determine how much purchasing power the money had at this moment. A simple example was if the Bank of Japan issued 1 trillion yuan at a time and let it flow into the market. Then these currencies would cause the amount of currencies circulating in a country to exceed the total effective economic output of the country, causing the price of all goods to skyrocket. Before the issuance of this trillion yuan, a cabbage might sell for 100 yuan. After the issuance, a cabbage might sell for 100 million yuan. So at this time, although people seemed to have more money in their hands, their purchasing power didn't change, and it even decreased. The result of this was that more money could only buy less things. This was the principle of inflation. Fortunately, this situation had nothing to do with the goods in the Krypton shopping mall. The system shopping mall could be seen as an ideal supermarket that would never experience inflation. The prices would always be constant, and there would always be a stable supply of goods. No matter how much money Ryuto had, he could use it to buy things in the Krypton mall. When a cabbage was sold for 100 yuan, a plane in the mall was sold for 100 million yuan. When a cabbage was sold for 100 million yuan, the planes in the mall were still sold for 100 million yuan. Considering this, and the fact that Rui Hui now had control of the Bank of Japan, which was responsible for issuing currency, she could control the face value and quantity of the currency at will. Hence, IM came up with this seemingly nonsensical idea to issue 1 trillion in currency. After this 1 trillion currency was issued, regardless of whether it had purchasing power or not, as long as it was in the hands of Ryuto and IM, the system would recognize it. In other words, the two of them could use almost worthless currency to exchange for valuable living creatures in the system. So that's how it is. It can be played like this, it's basically freeloading the system. After hearing Yongji's explanation, Long Do suddenly slapped his forehead, and he couldn't help but feel like his horizons had been broadened. When he used the system before, he only thought of an equivalent exchange. The system would give him the same amount of money he gave the system. Who knew that IM had no intention of making an equivalent exchange with the system? She even wanted to freeload. If there were no loopholes in IM's way of playing, then the Krypton shopping mall would become a permanent $0 supermarket for the two of them. After all, with the right to mint the currency, Rui Hui only needed to madly issue currency that had no real value and was only for Ryuto and IM to use. They could buy whatever they wanted. This kind of currency could be printed with 1 trillion, and the number of zeros behind the bill was more than the hell money. Such a ridiculous currency would definitely not be used in the normal market. It would only be treated as a lunatic who came to cause trouble, but it could be used in the system. Although this currency sounded ridiculous, this currency was produced through the proper channels. It was the currency recognized by the system, so it could be bought and sold in the Krypton shopping mall. Therefore, if one were to consider it from this perspective, the so-called one-hit killing technique for aliens of 1 trillion yuan was simply a waste of money. Even the entire Krypton shopping mall was a waste. Good heavens! This woman's brain was indeed abnormal. Thinking of this, Ryuto could not help but sigh deeply. He was extremely impressed by IM's imagination. Using currency to freeload the system, could a normal transmigrator do something like this? He couldn't do it. At the very least, Long Do himself couldn't think of such a shameless move. It was simply inhumane. Oh system, my pitiful, conscientious system. Since the birth of every main character who transmigrated with the system, who did not worship the system as a god. However, in the eyes of IM, there was no such thing as a god in the world. Because she, the sixth sky demon, was the god of this world. Just like this, when IM's strategy was decided, Rui Hui immediately followed her plan and carried out this system freeloading operation. First, Rui Hui found the Bank of Japan responsible for issuing currency. Although most of the functions of the bank had been suspended, the authority to issue currency was still there. However, when he heard the request of this person, the person in charge of the bank was obviously stunned. Rui Hui-sama, your request is 1 trillion. In short, you just have to produce this banknote and put it in the normal issuance sequence. You don't have to care about the rest. Yes. Although he did not know what these people wanted to do, the person in charge of the Bank of Japan could only do as they were told. After all, this country was now Rui Hui and IM's territory. The two were basically at the point where they could control everything. However, because the bank did not have this strange banknote template, they had to design, mold, and print it overnight. 2 days later, the banknote with an unknown number of zeros was finally released. Very good. It's starting. After holding the banknote in his hand, Ryuto gulped and then opened his personal attribute page. As expected, when he held the banknote, Ryuto's personal assets were displayed as 104.7 billion inch. This amount could be said to be chaotic to the extreme. It did not look like a normal monetary unit at all. But even so, Ryuto quickly opened the skill store and found the most expensive skill. It was as if it was not intended for anyone to buy at all. One-hit killing technique specifically for aliens. Purchase of one-hit killing technique specifically for aliens requires 100 billion. Confirm payment. Confirm payment. Just when Ryuto clicked on the word yes on the screen, he only felt his heart in his throat. But fortunately, after he clicked on it, the large amount of money in his personal assets was instantly cleared, and a strange skill with a very long name appeared in the skill bar. One-hit killing technique specifically for aliens. After learning it, you can be killed by the aliens who come to the Earth. How is it? Did you buy it? Seeing Ryuto looking at his hands, I am on the side asked with a smile. But this skill seems strange. After nodding, Ryuto pointed directly at the wall next to him. An array of light that looked like a translucent cube shot out from his fingertips. This scene looked like a laser with a finger, but after the light gathered by the translucent cube shot out, it did not cause any damage to the wall. Strange, very strange. As described in the skill, this skill was estimated to be a special skill for aliens. Other than that, it couldn't even kill an ant. Selling it at such a high price was simply outrageous. But if there was really an alien in front of him, then the meaning of this skill was different. The gorilla seems to be in the Pacific Ocean. I'll go meet it. After confirming that he had obtained this special skill, Ryuto looked up at the sea in the distance. His world seemed to have crossed the coast, and he looked at the figure that was flying here from thousands of kilometers away. Indeed, this kind of thing was more or less a little strange. It was hard to imagine that a living creature could fly across the Pacific Ocean to Asia from America, where the American was located. After all, the Pacific Ocean was the largest ocean in the world, with an area of about 1/3 of the total area of the Earth, and a horizontal length of nearly 20,000 kilometers from east to west. Even the most powerful bird or fish couldn't fly across such a long area. Of course, from a certain point of view, the alien creature wasn't flying toward them. Instead, it was running toward them. Yes, running. It was running crazily on the endless sea, using its strength to explain the words, running with the wind, freedom is the direction. If at this time, looking at the middle of the Pacific Ocean through satellite surveillance, the figure running crazily with storms and tsunamis wouldn't be seen. On the surface, the red muscular gorilla didn't look much different from an ordinary gorilla, except that it looked a little stronger. But at this time, it was swinging its slender arms and running directly on the sea. The sea couldn't be relayed. Logically, it should sink to the bottom of the sea when it stepped on the water. But this gorilla's running speed was too fast, really too fast. Before one of its feet sank, it lifted the other foot and moved forward, and it continued this running process repeatedly, so it didn't fall into the sea at all. Based on the few surveillance cameras, the alien monster ran at an astonishing speed of hundreds of meters per second, faster than a supersonic plane. Voila, voila la la la. Under this super speed, the alien monster ran crazily on the sea. Tornadoes continued to sweep the sky around it, and tsunamis continued to come from the sea below. With his own strength, he was able to create such a level of change in the heavens and earth. Even if he only saw the figure of this monkey from a distance, Ryuto had to sigh that this guy was indeed not an enemy that humans could fight against. Dragon. Ryuto, do you want to get closer? Is it already very dangerous? Just as Ryuto was observing the gorilla's movements from a distance, the supersonic jet pilot sitting in front said in a trembling tone. Before this, many countries have sent special teams to observe this gorilla, but almost all of them were shot down on the spot after being discovered. Within a radius of 10,000 meters, those who approached died without a burial place. Although the alien monster didn't say anything, its actions obviously carried out this sentence. After hearing the pilot's words, Long Do nodded slightly and said with a smile, "All right, you can go back first. Leave the rest to me." "Ah, I go back first? Then you—" Before he finished speaking, Ryuto actually opened the cockpit door of the supersonic jet. He rushed directly toward the sea below. What? When the pilot saw his actions, his scalp suddenly tingled with fear. At the same time, Ryuto, who was descending from a height of thousands of meters, took a deep breath and shouted into the distance, "Hey! Smelly monkey! Get over here!" When he took this breath, Ryuto's entire body seemed to expand, and his voice was like a huge sonic boom that blasted toward the alien monster that was running wildly not far away. Although it didn't understand what the guy was saying at all, the alien monster obviously understood the provocation in this sentence. Huh. So at that moment, its eyes that exuded a bright red luster, as if they were continuously filled with blood, suddenly glanced at the tiny human not far away, and immediately rushed over here. Fast, it was not as simple as fast. The distance between the two sides was more than 1,000 meters, but before Ryuto's body landed, a red light rushed directly toward his body. It was almost too late for him to react. But fortunately, Ryuto had already been prepared for its speed, and with the power of LV5 insight, he could roughly grasp the guy's movements. Smelly monkey! Go to hell! When the alien monster was about to open its bloody mouth and swallow Ryuto's body into its stomach, at the last moment, Dragon Fight pointed his finger at the alien's body and used the special skill he had just acquired. It was a one-hit kill technique that was used against aliens. Chapter 402. A catastrophe that could have led to the destruction of the world was turned into nothingness by that seemingly light finger. The system didn't lie. The so-called one-hit kill against aliens wasn't fake either. Under Ryuto's finger, the huge gorilla turned into dust and scattered in the ocean. What happened after that was very simple. As the superhero who saved the world, Ryuto gained great fame and popularity all over the world. Then Iam and Rue Hui made full use of this superhero's flag and annexed the entire American country and the surrounding America. Now that Yongji had such a large territory, and with the system's freeloading method discovered by Yongji, many well-equipped and loyal troops began to appear. Within a month, Yongji and Rue Hui had taken over a third of the world's countries, and named their territory the Tianmu country. 3 months later, more than half of the countries declared their surrender and took the initiative to join the territory of Tianmu. In less than half a year, Tianmu reached a peace agreement with the largest existing country, Chi Dragon. The two sides formed the Sky Dragon Alliance, the largest organization in history. Not long after, under the crushing force of the Sky Dragon Alliance, the world was unified and a new era of humans began. In this world, there were no more wars between countries. Everyone used technology, knowledge, and effort in the right direction. Our goal is the Sea of Stars. At this time, someone suggested. For Ryuto and the others who were enjoying the sunshine and beaches in Hawaii, exploring the vast unknown was obviously a very challenging thing. Speaking of which, our space jump ship is almost done, right? Built with those system materials of yours. In the morning, Rue Hui, who was wearing a bikini swimsuit and sunglasses, leisurely laid on a beach chair and asked Iam next to her. Yeah, but I don't care about these things recently. The large parasite in my stomach is too annoying. Iam, who was lying at the side, curled her lips slightly. She first looked at Rue Hui, then at her own stomach. At this time, because the two beauties lying on the beach were wearing split swimsuits, their bulging bellies could be said to be quite conspicuous. It was obvious at a glance what kind of life they were in. Rue Hui Komashiro was currently 7 months pregnant. Tenmu Iam was 8 months pregnant. Because of their pregnancy, the two leaders of the Sky Dragon Alliance had already let go of their responsibilities and handed over the work to the managers of Chi Dragon. Just as Rue Hui and Iam were enjoying a leisurely vacation before giving birth, 2 more figures appeared behind them. Lady Iam, Lady Rue Hui, are you feeling unwell today? Ryuto and Lin Hua also ran to the beach in swimsuits. Ryuto was also holding a large plate in his hand. On the plate were fruits and drinks, and he looked like a porter. However, when she saw the hickeys on Lin Hua's neck, Iam laughed and said, You took advantage of my pregnancy with Rue Hui. You really did well. After being laughed at by Iam, Lin Hua frowned slightly and said, I am also a victim. It was Lady Iam who drugged my wine, right? Ah, sorry, I was the one who drugged you. Lady Rue Hui. You. Don't call me Lady Rue Hui. We are sisters now, aren't we? Sister Lin Hua, before Iam and I unload the goods, we will have to rely on you to serve Ryuto Kun. Speaking of this, Rue Hui winked at Lin Hua. The feminine charm she exuded made Lin Hua unconsciously lick her lips. Rue Hui. Sister Rue Hui, he. After Sister Rue Hui gives birth, I must let her use a whip. He. Lin Hua did not know when it started, but she was also infatuated with Rue Hui. She always followed behind her, and Ryuto was like an accessory. From a certain point of view, the relationships in his harem were messy enough. Lin Hua liked Ayam and Rue Hui. Ayam liked Rue Hui and Ryuto. Rue Hui liked Ryuto and Ayam, and Ryuto liked all of them. Phew, forget it, as long as they are happy. But no matter what, nothing was more important than the harmony of his harem. If the relationships were messy, then so be it. After all, Ryuto was not the one who was at a disadvantage. In this leisurely atmosphere, not long after, Ryuto's son and daughter were born one after another. Just like the previous one, Rue Hui gave birth to a daughter. Her eyes and brows looked bright and full of life. She had the genes of a Komashiro family. On the other hand, Ayam gave birth to a boy. The moment he was born, he looked ferocious, like the birth of a demon king. After his children were born, Ryuto requested that they follow their ancestor's surname and change it to Li. This was because Ryuto's real name was Li Lon. Or rather, he was called Li Lon in his previous life. Li Lon. What a strange name. Are you from the Dragon Nation? I'm not in this life, but I was in my previous life. It's better to acknowledge my ancestors. It doesn't matter. You can call them whatever you like. Fortunately, Rue Hui and Ayam were not people who would care about such trivial matters, so Ryuto named his children Li Fugue and Li Ping En. It had to be said that this name was so old-fashioned that it was reminiscent of returning to one's ancestors. When it reached the extreme, it became tide. When tide reached the extreme, it became soil. However, the scene of Ayam holding Fugue and Rue Hui holding Ping and looked like a battle between Guan Yu and Qin Qiong. It was quite amusing. In this joyous atmosphere, the space jump program developed by the science department of the Sky Dragon Alliance had reached the stage of clinical trials. Originally, the science department wanted to create a spaceship that could travel through space through space jump. But before that, they had to test the function of this space jump. What would happen if this thing's space jump failed? When everyone gathered in the huge lab and looked at the circular space jump device in front of them, Rue Hui, who was holding her child, could not help but ask. In the hand of Rue Hui's child, Ping En, was holding a golden lock engraved with the Komiyoshi mark. It was a custom in Chi Dragon to give a newborn child a golden lock, and the mark engraved on it was the family mark of the mother, Rue Hui. If the space jump fails, it is possible to be teleported to a different dimension. No one knows where it will go. It is a very dangerous situation. At this time, Ryuto, who was standing next to Rue Hui, couldn't help but explain while reaching out and patting his daughter's head. But teleporting to a different dimension. That sounded familiar. Looking at the circular space jump machine in front of him, Ryuto smiled slightly and remembered the scene when he traveled through space. At that time, it was like a flash of lightning, and in the blink of an eye he had already appeared in this world. What if I use this machine? Do I have a chance to jump back? Just as Ryuto was thinking about this, the machine had also entered the state of activation. Buzz buzz buzz. Buzz 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 buzz. With a flash of strong light, the machine in front of them made a violent explosion and began to rotate at a high speed. Just as everyone's eyes were looking at the rotating machine, the daughter in Rue Hui's arms suddenly smirked, grabbed the golden lock on her chest, and threw it into the machine. Huh. That's... Before Ryuto and the others could react, the golden lock engraved with Kanzaki's mark flew into the machine and disappeared with a burst of strong light. As for the camera that was originally placed in the center of the machine and was about to be transferred to a certain point, it was already distorted into a pile of indescribable garbage. It seems to have failed. But where did the golden lock go? The scientists in charge of the research checked the machine, then reached out and scratched their heads with a puzzled look. However, just as Ryuto and the others were studying how to go to the Sea of Stars, under the control of the space jump device, this special golden lock crossed the distant space, and appeared in the garden of a building with the words headquarters of the Dragon Group hanging on it. At this time, in the garden, a mature woman with long brown hair who looked full of femininity was holding the hand of a 2-year-old boy and walking in the garden. "Mommy, mommy, what is that?" As they walked, the little boy saw the golden lock that fell in the garden, then he picked it up casually. "Don't randomly pick up things, this is..." Suddenly, the beautiful woman, Yunyen Sakujiri, took the golden lock from her son's hand, then showed a puzzled expression. The golden lock had the mark of the Kamiyoshi clan, which she naturally knew. But other than the mark, there were 2 strange words engraved on it: peace. The golden lock of the Kamiyoshi clan. Why was it engraved with peace? Wasn't it dragon mark and phoenix cry? Yunyen Sakujiri had seen similar golden locks many times when her son was young, and the twins of the colored glaze sisters, who were also given to them by Ryuto. Not long ago, the colored glaze successfully gave birth to a bunch of twins, and Ryuto happily named them a dragon and a phoenix, which meant that the dragon and the phoenix were auspicious, and gave them a pair of golden locks. Thinking of this, Yunyen Sakujiri brought her son to the inner room not far away, where the colored glaze was busy feeding the siblings. After giving birth to the twins, the colored glaze looked more mature than before. Although she was still far from Yunyen in certain areas, she looked decent and had some scale. "Colored glaze, did you drop this golden lock?" After entering the door, Yunyen Sakujiri handed over the golden lock that she picked up from the garden. "Golden lock. This is the mark of the Kamiyoshi clan?" The colored glaze took a look at it, then took the golden locks from the twins beside her to compare, and found that they were exactly the same. The design and shape of the 3 golden locks were exactly the same, but the names engraved on them were different. "That's strange. This golden lock was specially made by Ryuto. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be an extra piece. Dunia hasn't even given birth yet." Suddenly, colored glaze couldn't help but frown as different thoughts appeared in her mind. After his and Yunyen's children were born, Ryuto made such golden locks for their children one by one. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any extra locks. Unless that guy had someone on the outside, or even an illegitimate child. It shouldn't be that bad, right? Ryuto didn't have much contact with women outside, and when he went out to work, my mother would always keep an eye on him. I must be thinking too much, or maybe it was just a coincidence. After shaking her head, colored glaze tossed the thought of Ryuto having someone on the outside out of her mind. After all, even if she didn't believe in Ryuto, her husband, she had to believe in her mother, Ruehue. Since colored glaze became pregnant, most of her work was handed over to Ruehue. Recently, Ruehue was also very busy, although it seemed that she was very busy. Therefore, at this time, Ryuto, Ruehue, and Dunia were on a business trip to Amelican. On the way to negotiate with the president, it was naturally impossible for them to have any romantic relationship. As for Dunia, she was just pregnant for less than a month, so it was a bit too early to make this kind of golden lock. Forget it, I'll ask Ryuto when he comes back, if he dares to lie. Humph. Thinking of this, colored glaze reached out and touched the twins' little heads while sighing slightly. When colored glaze thought of this, on a private plane in the distant sky, Ryuto, who was wearing a suit, couldn't help but sneeze. Achoo! Who is cursing me? It can't be her, right? Cursing while dreaming? After sneezing, Ryuto pouted and looked at Dunia, who was wrapped in the quilt and sleeping on the side. Since this bear lowly knew that she was pregnant, her sleeping time became especially long every day. According to her, she needed to store energy for the babies in her belly and strive to give birth to 3 babies at once. Yunyen gave birth to 1, colored glaze gave birth to 2, I must be triplets, humph. Before this, Dunia had made this kind of outburst. Who knew if her small belly could hold so many little bears? Are you asleep, Dunia? And just after Ryuto sneezed, another mature figure came to his side with a burst of fragrance. Although more than 2 years had passed since Ryuto's wedding, the current Ruehue looked even younger. Her face was rosy, her skin was smooth, and there wasn't a single wrinkle on her face. It was hard to imagine that she was actually a grandmother. This girl has to sleep 14 hours a day. Let her be. Ryuto sighed slightly and looked at Rue Hui beside him. Ever since the Heavenly Eye group was disbanded, everything in this world changed. Ryuto went from a poor family to a big shot who could lead a country. And he also had a few cute wives and a few cute children. But as the saying went, the greater the power, the greater the responsibility. After having so many things, the corresponding pressure came one after another, which made Ryuto feel quite tired from time to time. But how should he put it? This was life. The kind of lucky person who had the ability and power to rule the world but was lying on the beach every day with a few beauties around him and didn't have to do anything probably didn't exist. If there was, Ryuto would definitely curse him for giving birth to children without assholes. Speaking of which, there shouldn't be such a person in the world, right? Haha. Suddenly, Ryuto smiled and looked at the distant sea of clouds outside the plane. At the same time, in another world, Ryuto, who was hugging Rue Hui and Ayam on the beach, also smiled and looked at the plane that happened to fly over their heads. End of book. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.